Some stories are born in fame, but not his. Johnny Depp's story begins in a small, trembling house, grows through hunger, heartbreak, and humiliation, rises into global glory, and then shatters in front of the whole world. But what makes his journey unforgettable isn't the fame he won. It's the life he survived. From a scared boy hiding from arguments, to a young artist with only $35 in his pocket, to a man destroyed by headlines and rebuilt by truth. This isn't the story of a movie star. It's the story of a soul that refused to die, no matter how many storms tried to break it. And what he looks like today, at 62, will change the way you see strength forever. Some legends begin with glory, but Johnny Depp's story began in a small town called Owensboro in Kentucky, inside a home where love and fear often lived in the same room. He was born on the 9th of June, 1963, the youngest of 4 children. His parents, John Christopher Depp Sr. and Betty Sue Palmer, worked hard, but struggled to keep peace inside the house. His father was a civil engineer with a quiet personality, while his mother worked as a waitress and had a strong temper that came out often. Their home was not extremely poor, but they lived close to the edge. One unexpected bill or one missed paycheck could easily push the family into real trouble. Johnny grew up watching his parents fight more than they smiled. Some nights the air became heavy before an argument even started, and the children learned to sense the tension before hearing any words. The house was filled with cigarette smoke, the smell of reheated coffee, and the sound of tired breathing after long days. The small details were part of his daily life: dim lights that flickered, quiet whispers, and the kind of silence that makes a child feel something bad is about to happen. These things shaped him more than he understood at the time. The family moved more than 20 times while Johnny was still young. Every time he started to feel comfortable somewhere, they packed their things again and left. This constant change made it difficult for him to make friends. He didn't stay long enough in one place for anyone to really know him, and he learned to expect goodbyes before he even had time to say hello. This lifestyle made him feel disconnected and unsure about stability. It taught him not to get attached, because he never knew how long he would stay. Over time, he began to build emotional walls just to protect himself from the pain of leaving. Inside the house, love existed, but it was mixed with fear and stress. Johnny often felt invisible, even when everyone was in the same room. His siblings did what they could to comfort each other, but the unstable environment made it hard for any of them to feel safe. Johnny withdrew into himself, avoiding attention and keeping his feelings quiet. He was a sensitive child who noticed everything, yet he rarely talked about what he saw or felt. He carried those emotions silently, trying to understand why the world around him felt so heavy. When Johnny was 12, something happened that gave him a small escape from the chaos. His mother gave him a used guitar. It wasn't in perfect condition, but it became his most valued possession. He spent hours locked in his room, teaching himself how to play. The guitar gave him a place to put his feelings when he could not express them in words. Music became his safe space, a way to cope when the fights became too loud or the house felt too tense. He later said that music was not just a hobby for him, it was a lifeline, something that kept him grounded when everything else felt like it was falling apart. But the storm inside the family kept growing. When Johnny was 15, his father suddenly left the house without any warning. One morning, he simply wasn't there. His coffee cup was still on the table, and the kitchen chair was still pulled out, but he was gone. This moment left a deep mark on Johnny. The deep absence of a father figure without explanation created a wound that stayed with him for many years. He later described it as a moment that made the world stop making sense. He felt abandoned and confused, and he didn't know how to process the loss. His mother struggled emotionally after the separation, and Johnny often saw her break down under the pressure of raising 4 children alone. To keep the family going, Betty Sue worked even harder than before. She took on extra shifts, came home exhausted, and sometimes her frustration spilled over onto her children. Johnny didn't blame her. He understood she was overwhelmed. But seeing his mother worn down and knowing his father had left without looking back created a deep crack in his sense of trust. Johnny learned early that people could disappear from his life without warning, and this affected how he formed relationships later on. 2 years after the separation, his mother married Robert Palmer, a man who treated Johnny with kindness and respect. Robert was calm, patient, and caring, very different from what Johnny was used to. For the first time, he saw what a stable adult presence looked like. Johnny later called him a real gentleman and said he felt grateful for what Robert taught him about quiet strength. This relationship helped him understand that not all men were distant or unpredictable. It gave him a healthier example of what a father figure could be, even though the damage from his father's departure was still there. These early experiences shaped Johnny in powerful ways. The constant moving made him independent, but also mistrustful. The emotional tension at home made him sensitive, but also guarded. The sudden loss of his father made him crave connection, but fear abandonment. The guitar gave him comfort, but it also highlighted how deeply he needed an outlet to handle his emotions. All these layers built the foundation of who he would become. His childhood pain influenced his behavior, his future relationships, and even the emotional depth he brought into his acting roles. Many of his performances later in life came from real feelings he had carried since childhood. Johnny's early years were full of struggle, instability, and hidden hurt. They created wounds he would spend much of his adult life trying to understand. But they also planted the seeds of creativity, empathy, and emotional depth. Without those years, he would not have become the artist the world grew to admire. But the same fire that nearly destroyed the boy was about to ignite the artist the world would never forget. Before Hollywood crowned him, life stripped him bare. At the age of 16, Johnny Depp walked away from home with almost nothing. He did not leave because he wanted adventure or freedom. He left because he no longer knew how to live inside the pressure and emotional weight of his house. With only $35 in his pocket and his guitar hanging from his shoulder, he believed music might give him a direction when everything else felt broken. He got on a bus heading south, hoping that maybe life would make more sense somewhere far from the chaos he grew up in. Florida was his first stop, but it was not a place of comfort. It was a place to survive. Johnny played cheap gigs with his band, wherever they could find a corner, a stage, or even just an outlet to plug in their instruments. They played in bars that smelled of beer, in garages that echoed with humidity, and in small clubs where the audience barely looked at the stage. The pay was low, often only enough for a small meal or gas money. Many nights he slept in his car, windows fogged from his breath and the humid air outside. His fingers bled from hours of playing because he practiced even when he was exhausted. Music was the only thing that made the hard days feel worthwhile. But passion does not pay rent, and survival demands more than dreams. Johnny took whatever work he could find to keep going. He painted houses, cleaned apartments, and even worked in telemarketing, calling strangers to sell pens or office supplies. He hated the job, but he needed the money. Every job was just another step to stay afloat. He learned early that hard work did not guarantee success, but without hard work, he had no chance at all. In those years, he and his childhood friend, Bruce Whitkin, formed a band called The Kids. They were determined, hopeful, and ready to give everything they had for music. But reality was painful. The Kids performed in front of tiny audiences, sometimes only a handful of people scattered around the room. After playing for hours, the band might receive just $10, barely enough to buy food. Once, after a long performance, the club owner gave Johnny a $10 bill and told him, "That's all you're worth, kid." Johnny thanked him politely, even though the words cut deep. He knew that if he couldn't accept the small steps, he would never reach the big ones. Despite the struggles, Johnny kept believing that music was his only path. He and the band eventually decided to move to Los Angeles, the place where dreams were supposed to come true. They drove across the country with more faith than money, hoping California would open doors that Florida never could. But Los Angeles was even harder. The city was full of people chasing the same dream, and many were far more connected, trained, and prepared than Johnny. Suddenly, he felt even smaller than before. Life in Los Angeles was harsh. Johnny lived in cramped apartments that were shared with multiple people. He drank cheap instant coffee because he couldn't afford anything better. Most days he lived on very little food. The rent came fast, and money came slow. The struggle felt endless, and the dream that once felt bright started to fade. He felt invisible in a city full of talent and noise. But not everything in those years was difficult. Johnny met Lori Ann Allison, a makeup artist 6 years older than him. They married in 1983. Lori was calm, patient, and supportive. She believed in Johnny even when he doubted himself. She gave him a sense of stability during a time when he felt lost. Their home was simple, but it felt safe. She was also the one who opened the door that would change his entire life. Through Lori, Johnny met Nicolas Cage. At that time, Cage was already acting and understood how Hollywood worked. When he met Johnny, he saw something in him, not skill, not training, but a raw, honest presence. Cage believed Johnny had potential and encouraged him to try acting. Johnny laughed at first because he had never acted, not even in school. But Cage insisted that he had the right look and natural intensity. Johnny decided to try acting because, at that point, he felt he had nothing to lose. With Cage's help, Johnny got an audition for Wes Craven's horror film, A Nightmare on Elm Street. He walked into the audition room with no training and no idea what to expect. He was nervous, humble, and completely unprepared. But sometimes destiny works in quiet ways. Wes Craven's daughter happened to be there, and when she looked at the photos of the actors auditioning, she pointed at Johnny and said, "He looks kind." Those 3 simple words changed his fate. Johnny was chosen for the part. The role was small, but it was enough. When he filmed his first scenes, he felt something click inside him. Acting gave him another way to express the emotions he had been carrying since childhood. He understood pain, fear, loneliness, and confusion deeply, and those feelings helped him portray characters with honesty. When he received his first real paycheck, he felt a sense of relief. For the first time, someone had paid him for something creative. For the first time, he felt seen. The film did well, and although Johnny's role was not large, it was enough to get him noticed. He suddenly had hope again. He realized that maybe his future was not only in music, but also in acting. It was a new road, one he never planned to walk, but it was a road that finally led somewhere brighter. He had stepped onto Hollywood's first rung, but fame had its own storm waiting just beyond the lights. The world loved him instantly. He loved none of it back. When Johnny Depp joined 21 Jump Street in 1987, everything in his life changed almost overnight. He had taken the role mainly because he needed work, not because he wanted to become a television star. But the show became a huge national hit, especially among teenagers. His face ended up on posters, magazines, and bedroom walls. Everywhere he went, young fans screamed his name. People treated him like the next big heartthrob, and Hollywood quickly realized he had become a teen idol. But Johnny never felt comfortable with this kind of attention. While millions adored him, he felt like he was being turned into something he wasn't. Instead of seeing him as an artist or a serious performer, people saw him as a pretty face for young audiences. He often said, "I felt like a product, not an actor." And he meant it. The show brought him fame, but it also brought a sense of emptiness. It pressured him into becoming the kind of celebrity he never wanted to be. Fame created a strange divide inside him. His artistic side wanted freedom, creativity, and meaningful roles. But the business side of television wanted him to stay exactly where he was: a marketable name, a charming face, a tool for ratings. This clash between his soul and the machine around him made him restless. He wanted roles that allowed him to express real emotion, not just look good on camera. He wanted to act from the heart, not from a script someone thought would sell the most posters. Because of this, Depp felt trapped. He knew that if he stayed on 21 Jump Street, he would never escape the teen idol label. But leaving the show felt risky. It meant walking away from steady income and guaranteed fame. Still, he could not ignore the feeling growing inside him. He wanted something real. He wanted characters who were strange, deep, emotional, and honest roles that connected with the pain and confusion he had carried since childhood. So he decided to step away, even if it meant upsetting the industry that had helped make him famous. The decision turned out to be the right one. When Johnny met director Tim Burton, everything changed again, but this time in a way that felt true to him. Burton saw something different in Johnny, something raw, sensitive, and misunderstood. Burton wasn't looking for a teen idol. He was looking for an outsider, someone who could play characters with hidden emotion and quiet depth. In Johnny, he found the perfect partner. Their first film together was Edward Scissorhands in 1990. Johnny played a gentle, lonely character who had scissors for hands and struggled to fit into the world around him. The role was unlike anything he had done before. It required vulnerability, emotional softness, and a deep understanding of what it feels like to be different. For Johnny, the character felt close to home. He understood what it meant to feel like an outsider. He understood silence, sadness, and longing. He poured all his childhood wounds into the role. The film became a major success, and it completely changed how people saw him. Instead of a teen idol, he was now viewed as a unique and serious actor. For Johnny, this film was not just a job, it was therapy. It allowed him to express emotions he had held inside for years. From that point on, he became known for playing unusual, complex, and heartfelt characters. He didn't chase traditional Hollywood roles. He went after characters who were misfits, dreamers, and broken souls. After Edward Scissorhands, Johnny continued to build his career through roles that allowed him to grow. In Benny and June, 1993, he played a quirky young man with a gentle spirit. In Ed Wood, 1994, he played a passionate but struggling filmmaker who refused to give up on his dreams. In Donnie Brasco, 1997, he acted alongside Al Pacino in a serious crime drama, showing a stronger and more intense side of his talent. Each film helped shape him into an actor known for depth rather than glamour. But even as his acting skills grew and his career climbed, fame became harder for him to handle. He didn't enjoy interviews, red carpets, flashing cameras, or paparazzi following him everywhere he went. He didn't like having strangers judge his life, his relationships, or his mistakes. Fame felt loud, invasive, and draining. Instead of feeling supported by the world, he often felt watched and misunderstood. He also began to discover that being famous can create isolation. People wanted the image of Johnny Depp, not the real person behind it. They wanted the characters he played, not the quiet man who preferred to stay out of the spotlight. He struggled to trust people because he never knew who liked him for himself and who liked him for his name. The more famous he became, the more alone he sometimes felt. He once said that fame made him feel like he was living in a fishbowl, with everyone staring but no one truly seeing him. The paparazzi made things even worse. They followed him everywhere, hoping to catch something scandalous, even if it meant invading his privacy or creating rumors. Interviews also stressed him out. He disliked being asked personal questions and hated the pressure to act cheerful even when he wasn't feeling that way. Fame demanded emotional energy that he didn't always have. In this period, Johnny learned that success does not always bring peace. He had reached a level of recognition he never asked for, and while the world cheered for him, he felt more disconnected from himself. But the one thing that kept him going was acting. Playing emotional and unusual characters helped him release the feelings he didn't know how to express in everyday life. Acting became his escape, his safe space, and sometimes even his friend. Even though he struggled with fame, he continued to grow as an artist. He was becoming known for his ability to completely change himself for a role. His work with Tim Burton became one of the strongest creative partnerships in Hollywood. Together, they built a style of storytelling that allowed Johnny to express his inner world through unique characters. As the 1990 seconds moved into the early 2000s, Johnny reached a point where he felt he had proven himself as a serious actor. But he did not yet know that the role that would change his life forever was still waiting in the shadows of the Caribbean. He created a character that reshaped cinema and broke him in the process. In 2003, Johnny Depp stepped into a role that no one expected would change his life so deeply. When Disney began working on Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl, the studio imagined a fun adventure movie based on a theme park ride. No one imagined Captain Jack Sparrow would become one of the most famous characters in movie history. But from the moment Johnny started building the role, he knew he didn't want to play it in a normal, safe way. He wanted Jack to be strange, funny, clever, unpredictable, and full of spirit. He wanted him to feel real, like someone who had lived a full and messy life on the sea. However, his performance shocked Disney executives. During early filming, the studio panicked. They complained that Johnny seemed drunk, odd, and far too different from what they expected. Some even wondered if he was trying to ruin the film on purpose. They asked him to tone it down, act more serious, act more like a traditional hero. Johnny refused. He said he knew exactly what he was doing, and he believed audiences would understand Jack Sparrow, even if the executives didn't. He stood by his vision with confidence, even though it was risky and could have cost him the role. His instincts proved right. When the film was released, Jack Sparrow became an instant worldwide phenomenon. People loved his humor, his swagger, his strange movements, and the way he seemed both chaotic and charming at the same time. Children copied his walk. Adults repeated his lines. The character became part of global pop culture in ways no one predicted. Johnny received his first Oscar nomination for the role, and suddenly he was not just a successful actor, he was a global icon. But behind the praise and applause, Johnny was struggling more than anyone could see. The huge success brought new pressure. People expected him to stay funny, stay perfect, stay Jack Sparrow wherever he went. Interviewers wanted him to act like the character. Fans wanted him to behave like a pirate. The world loved Jack, but many people ignored Johnny, the human being behind the character. That separation slowly created emptiness inside him. He once said he felt that people loved the character he created, not the real person he was. As the first film became a global hit, Disney rushed into sequels. Each new movie made hundreds of millions, and Johnny became one of the highest-paid actors in Hollywood. The money was unbelievable, more than $55 million per film, but success came with a cost. Johnny spent long months filming in difficult locations. He worked through physical pain, exhaustion, and stress. The non-stop filming schedule left him with little time to rest, reflect, or take care of himself. The more he worked, the more he felt disconnected from who he was. By the second and third films, he began to feel trapped. Jack Sparrow had become a blessing and a cage at the same time. Playing the character made the world laugh, but it also took him further away from himself. He felt pressure to keep Jack alive, even when he felt tired of playing him. The fame grew larger than the man, and Johnny felt his identity slipping. He said once, "The more I succeed, the less I feel." And it was true. Every award, every magazine cover, every billion-dollar box office number made him feel more hollow instead of proud. Working on the sequels also brought stress into his personal life. The long months away from home affected his relationships. The pressure from the studio, the paparazzi, and the constant expectations added weight to his already sensitive nature. He started using alcohol and other substances to escape the stress. He didn't know how to slow down, and Hollywood didn't want him to slow down either. He was the face of a billion-dollar franchise, and the machine around him needed him working non-stop. By the late 2000s, quiet cracks began to show in his life. Outwardly, he was still one of the most famous actors in the world. But inside, he felt emotionally drained and disconnected. He had lost touch with the quiet young man who once loved music in a small Florida garage. His sense of self became blurry. He was Jack Sparrow to the world, but he didn't know who he was when the cameras turned off. The pressure of fame mixed with his old wounds from childhood abandonment, instability, and emotional pain he had never resolved. The cracks that formed during his early years began opening again. The constant filming, interviews, events, and public attention became overwhelming. Johnny started feeling burnout. He wanted to act in smaller, meaningful films, but the world wanted him as a blockbuster hero. Every new Pirates film made him richer, but the work drained him more. He also felt the weight of being responsible for the entire franchise. If something went wrong, people blamed him. If a film succeeded, people expected even more from him next time. His emotional health continued to suffer. The endless spotlight fed into his anxiety. He could not walk down the street without being photographed. He could not have a private moment without being watched. Fame began to feel like a prison. He often said that he never wanted to be a movie star, he only wanted to act. But acting and stardom had become tangled together in a way he could no longer separate. By the end of the 2000s, Johnny Depp was one of the most famous people on earth, but inside he felt more stressed, more tired, and more emotionally fragile than ever. His world looked perfect from the outside, but it was cracking quietly. The pressure, the burnout, the expectations, and the emotional weight of his life were building into something deeper and darker. And even though he stood on top of Hollywood, he could not see the trouble coming. He stood at the top of the world, unaware that everything beneath him was already beginning to crumble. He once owned islands, villages, and mansions, until the ground disappeared beneath his feet. In the early 2010 seconds, Johnny Depp reached a level of wealth that very few actors ever experience. His net worth was estimated at around $650 million. He had more money than he ever imagined, especially considering he once started his life with only $35 in his pocket. With this fortune, he bought properties around the world. One of the biggest was a 37-acre French village that he renovated and turned into a private home. He also bought a private island in the Bahamas, a luxury yacht, dozens of cars, and an enormous collection of art, guitars, and valuables. At one point, he employed around 40 full-time staff members to maintain his properties, security, and travel needs. But behind this huge lifestyle was a spending pattern that grew out of control. Johnny trusted people he should not have trusted, and he allowed others to manage his money without checking what they were doing. Reports later showed that he was spending around $2 million per month. This included maintaining multiple homes, paying staff, buying expensive artwork, flying in private jets, and making generous purchases for friends and family. For someone earning millions per film, it seemed manageable at first, but as years went by, the spending only increased, while his financial team failed to warn him about the consequences. Eventually, the truth came crashing down. Johnny discovered that his longtime management company, TMG, the management group, had been handling his finances in ways he did not understand and did not approve. He believed they had mismanaged his money, failed to pay his taxes properly, taken loans without telling him, and allowed large debts to grow behind his back. Feeling betrayed, Johnny decided to take legal action. In early 2017, he sued TMG for fraud and negligence, saying they caused him to lose tens of millions of dollars. TMG responded by filing a countersuit. They claimed Johnny was to blame for his own financial problems because he spent too much. They released details of his expenses to the public, numbers that shocked the world. Headlines focused not on his acting, but on his spending habits. Millions on wine, private flights, and luxury items. For the first time, the media turned him into a symbol of waste and irresponsibility. The story spread quickly, and people judged him without understanding the full picture. It was a painful moment because his private financial life became entertainment for strangers. During this time, Johnny's career began to feel the impact as well. Some of his films were not performing the way they used to. The Lone Ranger in 2013 was a major financial failure, losing nearly $200 million for the studio. Mordecai in 2015 also struggled at the box office and became a favorite target for critics. These back-to-back disappointments made Hollywood nervous. Studios began to wonder whether Johnny, once a strong box office name, was losing his draw. Slowly, without saying it directly, Hollywood started stepping back. Offers became fewer. Big studios watched the financial headlines and the growing drama around Johnny's personal life, and they preferred to stay cautious. The world that once celebrated him began to question him. Even though he had been one of the most profitable actors of his generation, the new narrative painted him as unstable and unreliable. This shift affected Johnny deeply. As the financial lawsuits continued and the news stories got harsher, he started to lose his sense of direction. Years of stress had already taken a toll on him emotionally, and now the pressure became even heavier. He struggled with insomnia, anxiety, and the feeling that every corner of his life was falling apart. His childhood wounds, the ones he spent years trying to bury under work and fame, began resurfacing. He felt like he was losing control of the world he had built with so much effort. But even while his career and finances were shaken, one thing kept him grounded: his children. Johnny has always been a loving and involved father. Lily Rose and Jack were the one part of his life that gave him stability and purpose. No matter what happened in the media or in his career, he did not allow anything to weaken his relationship with them. Being there, the father reminded him that he was more than the headlines and more than the Hollywood machine. He often said that his children saved him, and during these difficult years, that remained true. However, being a father did not remove the pressure from the rest of his life. It only gave him strength to keep fighting. The legal battles continued for years, draining not just his finances, but his energy and trust. He felt betrayed not just by TMG, but by the entire system that was supposed to protect him. The stress worsened his emotional state, and old habits like alcohol began creeping back into his life, not as pleasure, but as escape. Meanwhile, the world around him continued to judge him. The combination of financial problems, negative press, and box office failures created a perfect storm. Johnny tried to keep working, tried to keep smiling in public, but behind the scenes he was carrying a weight he could no longer hide. His team changed, his friendships shifted, and he found himself in a circle that felt smaller than it had ever been. This period marked the beginning of a major decline in his public image. The stress built like pressure inside a sealed container. Everything he had worked for, fame, fortune, respect, seemed to be slipping through his fingers. And although he did not know it yet, this was only the beginning of a much larger battle, because nothing could prepare him for the firestorm waiting around the corner, a storm that would rewrite his entire legacy. It began like destiny and ended like a public execution. Johnny Depp first met Amber Heard on the set of The Rum Diary in 2009. At that time, both were in relationships, but the connection between them was clear. There was chemistry, curiosity, and a sense of danger. Johnny later said he felt something shift the moment he talked to her. Amber was young, confident, and bold. She seemed to understand parts of him that he kept hidden from the world. For Johnny, who had just come out of a long and quiet relationship with Vanessa Paradis, Amber represented excitement and intensity. It felt like something he was meant to experience, even if the path ahead was not stable. Their relationship grew slowly at first, but once it became serious, it moved fast. By the time Johnny was 51, they got married in a small ceremony. Outwardly, it looked like a new chapter. The media called it a Hollywood love story, but inside the relationship, things were already unstable. Both of them had strong personalities, and their emotional needs did not always match. What began as passion soon turned into arguments, misunderstandings, and moments that neither later wanted to remember. Their marriage did not last long. Within months, the problems became more intense. Johnny's life was already filled with pressure from the studios, from his finances, and from the overwhelming fame surrounding him. Amber's personality and Johnny's emotional sensitivity sometimes clashed in ways that made the relationship explosive. Their home, which should have been a private space of peace, became a place of tension. Behind closed doors, the relationship broke down more quickly than anyone on the outside realized. In May 2016, Amber filed for divorce and requested a restraining order. The moment this news became public, it exploded across the world. Headlines accused Johnny of things he strongly denied. Photos, statements, and rumors spread fast. For the first time in his life, the world doubted his character. Johnny said he never did what he was accused of, but the narrative spun out of his control. He was shocked at how quickly public opinion turned against him. Within hours, many people believed the headlines. The man who played beloved characters for decades suddenly became a villain in the eyes of the media. The pain of being labeled something he said he was not hurt him deeply. The divorce was finalized with a $7 million settlement that Amber said she would donate. Both sides released a joint statement saying their relationship was intensely passionate and volatile, but that neither party made false accusations for financial gain. Still, the damage to Johnny's reputation was already done. Even after the settlement, the negative attention did not fade. In 2018, Amber wrote an op-ed for the Washington Post, where she described herself as a public figure representing domestic abuse. She did not mention Johnny's name, but the message was clear. To the public and the studios, she was talking about him. The article became the final blow to his career. Within months, Johnny felt the doors of Hollywood closing. Roles he was already signed for began slipping away. He said the article destroyed his reputation and made him a target online and in the media. People who had worked with him for decades stayed silent, worried about their own image. Johnny decided to fight back. He filed a $50 million lawsuit for defamation, saying the op-ed damaged his life in ways he could never repair. This decision began a legal battle that would last 6 years. As soon as the lawsuit was filed, everything became even more public. Every detail from their relationship, every argument, every message, and every private moment was suddenly part of a global discussion. It was no longer just a divorce. It was a war in the public eye. During this time, studios cut ties with him. Disney removed him from Pirates of the Caribbean, ending his run as Jack Sparrow. Warner Brothers removed him from the Fantastic Beasts franchise, erasing him from the role of Gellert Grindelwald. These losses were not just professional, they were emotional. Jack Sparrow was one of the most important roles of his life. Losing it felt like losing part of himself. He said it was heartbreaking to see how quickly the industry turned away from him. All of this took a heavy toll on him. As the lawsuits dragged on and the negative headlines continued, Johnny sank into depression and isolation. He struggled with sleep, stress, and emotional pain. Old habits, like drinking, returned when he felt overwhelmed. He tried to stay strong for his children, but the pressure was crushing. He felt like he was being erased from the industry he had given his entire life to. Then came the first major legal battle in London when Johnny sued a British newspaper for calling him a wife-beater. The trial was long and painful, with personal details shared endlessly in the media. Johnny lost that case. Headlines mocked him. Many people believed his career was finished. For the first time, he seemed truly defeated. The world had judged him before hearing his full story, but he still had one last chance to tell his side. In 2022, the defamation lawsuit in the United States finally went to trial. This time, cameras were allowed inside the courtroom. Millions of people watched daily. Every testimony, every recording, every expression became a piece of internet content. People formed opinions, argued online, and followed the case like a global drama. It was intense, emotional, and impossible to escape. The trial became one of the biggest public spectacles in modern history. Johnny knew the world had already buried him, but one courtroom was about to become the stage of his resurrection. He didn't walk into court seeking victory, only the return of his voice. When the 2022 Virginia trial began, the world stopped to watch. Millions of people around the globe tuned in to the live stream as if it were a major event. Every day, social media filled with clips, reactions, and discussions. For weeks, the courtroom became the center of global attention. People didn't just follow the case, they studied every detail, every sentence, every facial expression. Johnny Depp, who had been silent for years, was finally going to speak for himself. From the beginning of the trial, people noticed something unexpected about him. Johnny entered the courtroom calm, polite, and gentle. He didn't look angry or aggressive. Instead, he looked tired, older, and worn out from years of fighting. During breaks, instead of talking or showing frustration, he quietly sat and made sketches in his notebook. Sometimes he drew flowers, sometimes small designs. These simple drawings softened the public image of him. People saw not a superstar, but a human being trying to stay grounded during one of the hardest moments of his life. Throughout the trial, Johnny remained respectful to everyone in the room, even when the questions became difficult or painful. His humility touched many viewers. He didn't try to appear dramatic or emotional. He told his story slowly and honestly, saying he just wanted the truth to be heard. He said he felt his life had been ruined by accusations he believed were false. He never raised his voice. He never insulted anyone. His calmness brought public sympathy, especially when the court played audio recordings, messages, and evidence from both sides. For the first time, people heard the private conversations that had destroyed his career. These recordings and testimonies changed the narrative completely. What the world had believed for years suddenly looked different. People began to question the original story. They saw Johnny as someone who had been deeply hurt, not only publicly, but emotionally. They heard his voice crack at times, and they saw how painful it was for him to relive moments he had kept hidden. Many viewers felt that he had been silenced for too long. Slowly, public opinion shifted in his favor. Even with the new support, the emotional toll on Johnny was clear. His face looked older than before. His eyes carried exhaustion from years of stress and heartbreak. His shoulders were heavier, as if he carried a weight no one else could see. While the trial played out day after day, people watched a man who looked like he had survived a long storm, but was still shaking from it. His spirit was still there, but it was bruised. When the trial finally came to an end, the world waited for the verdict. On the 1st of June 2022, the jury announced their decision. They found that Johnny had been defamed. They awarded him $10 million in compensatory damages and $5 million in punitive damages, though the punitive amount was later reduced to $350,000 due to state limits. Amber Heard was granted $2 million in her counterclaim. But the meaning behind the numbers was what mattered most. The money was not the victory. For Johnny, the real win was something deeper. He released a statement shortly after the verdict. "The jury gave me my life back. I am truly humbled." These words showed what he had been fighting for all along. He didn't want revenge or a dramatic win. He wanted his voice, his reputation, and his dignity returned. He felt that for 6 years he had been forced to live under a dark cloud, treated as guilty before he could even defend himself. The trial lifted that cloud. He gained something he could not put a price on: the chance to be seen as who he really was, not the person the headlines created. Fans and supporters around the world celebrated the verdict. Streets filled with cheers. Social media exploded with messages of relief, support, and happiness. For many, it felt like justice had finally been served. But while the world celebrated, Johnny did not. He did not throw parties, make bold statements, or enjoy the spotlight. Instead, he quietly stepped away from the noise. He chose gratitude over celebration, peace over attention, and healing over victory. After the verdict, he returned to the one place where he always found comfort: music. He went on tour with legendary guitarist Jeff Beck. On stage, he looked lighter, more relaxed. Music allowed him to feel free again. He wasn't there to prove anything. He wasn't there to impress anyone. He was simply doing something that made him feel alive. Fans saw him smiling again, not as an actor or a celebrity, but as a man reconnecting with his passion. This period marked the beginning of a new chapter for Johnny. The trial did not restore his old Hollywood life, but it restored something more important: his dignity. He no longer needed to chase roles or prove his worth. The world saw that he had been through pain, yet he still carried himself with grace. The resurrection of his public image was not about fame returning. It was about being understood again, being believed again, and being allowed to exist without the weight of false narratives. Johnny's victory was not loud or dramatic. It was quiet, steady, and deeply human. He regained his voice and the right to stand as himself. But even after reclaiming his name, he still had work to do. The world saw a survivor, but he knew the battle inside him was far from over. Because, after reclaiming his name, he still had to rebuild the man behind it. The fire didn't destroy him, it refined him. After years of public battles, stress, and constant pressure, Johnny Depp chose a quieter path. Instead of returning to Hollywood's bright lights, he moved toward a life that offered peace. He settled in Somerset, England, on a beautiful $16 million countryside estate. But for him, the property was not about showing wealth. It was a sanctuary, a place where he could breathe without cameras, reporters, or judgment. The wide fields, old stone buildings, trees, and open skies created the kind of calm he had missed for decades. For the first time, in a long time, he could wake up without fear of headlines or chaos. Somerset gave him something he had been searching for since childhood: stillness. He spends most of his days surrounded by nature, where the loudest sound is often just the wind or birds. The environment feels safe to him, and it matches the slower life he now prefers. He doesn't need noise anymore. He doesn't chase attention. He finally lives at a pace that lets him rest, reflect, and enjoy simple moments. The estate is filled with quiet: corners, art rooms, old vinyl records, and books. It reflects who he has become, someone who values peace more than anything that money can buy. In this new chapter, Johnny has also built a strong art career. Art has always been part of his life, but after the trial, it became one of his main outlets. He creates portraits of people he admires: artists, musicians, actors, and personal heroes. His style is colorful, emotional, and expressive. When his artwork was released to the public, it sold out in hours and earned millions. But for Johnny, it isn't about the money. Painting gives him a sense of control and comfort. It helps him express feelings he cannot put into words. Many people see his past pain reflected in the brushstrokes. His art feels personal, honest, and full of life. Music has also remained a huge part of who he is. After the trial, He toured with Hollywood Vampires, the rock band he performs in with Alice Cooper and Joe Perry. Being on stage made him feel young. Again, not because of fame, but because of the energy music gives him. For him, music is not a job, it is medicine. When he plays guitar, he feels connected to the teenager who once dreamed of making it big. Music gives him freedom without the pressure of Hollywood. It's the one place where he doesn't feel judged, only understood. A big part of his healing also comes from his relationship with his children. Lily Rose and Jack remain central in his life. His daughter, Lily Rose, has built her own career in acting and modeling. She often speaks about how much love and support she receives from her father. Jack prefers to live outside the public eye, focusing on art and music just like his father. Johnny's bond with both of them grew even stronger during his legal struggles. He often said that his children were the reason he kept fighting. They never stopped believing in him. And today, they remain his strongest source of happiness and motivation. In his private world, there is also a quiet companionship that brings him comfort. Joel Rich, the London attorney who supported him during his legal battles, has been part of his life in a gentle and steady way. Their bond is not loud or public. It's quiet, respectful, and mature. After years of painful relationships and media pressure, Johnny appreciates a connection that is private and calm. Whether they are together romantically or simply share strong trust, her presence in his life represents stability after years of emotional storms. Even with his quieter lifestyle, Johnny has continued to show a kind heart. He has donated millions over the years, often quietly and without seeking credit. He supports children's hospitals, relief efforts, and various charities. He once visited sick children in the hospital dressed as Jack Sparrow, just to make them smile. Many reports say he often gives anonymously because he doesn't want headlines, he just wants to help. Kindness has always been part of his character, especially when it involves children, struggling artists, or people facing hardship. What makes this stage of his life special is that he no longer has hunger for fame. After everything he has been through, he values authenticity more than celebrity status. He does not attend many Hollywood events, he rarely gives interviews, and he avoids social media noise unless needed. He prefers mornings with vinyl records playing softly in the background, simple cups of coffee, afternoons spent painting or writing, and evenings watching the sunset. These small routines give him peace. They help him stay grounded and grateful. Every part of his current life shows the lessons he has learned: humility, endurance, and humanity. He understands now that success is not measured by money or movies, but by inner peace. He learned that storms can take everything from you except what is meant to return. He learned that people's opinions change fast, but your own truth stays with you forever. Most importantly, he learned that healing is not loud. It is slow, quiet, and deeply personal. Johnny's legacy today is not defined by scandals or box office numbers. It is defined by resilience. He survived childhood trauma, heartbreak, financial ruin, false accusations, and global humiliation. Yet he still stands with kindness, creativity, and grace. His story is no longer just about fame. It is about survival and finding yourself again after the world has tried to break you. In many ways, his life now is the real victory. He lives as a man who has finally found balance. His home in Somerset is not a kingdom, but a refuge. His art is not for fame, but for the soul. His music is not for applause, but for expression. His relationships are not for the cameras, but for comfort. After a lifetime of storms, he has chosen the quiet path, and it suits him. As he steps into the years ahead, one question remains: what becomes of a man who has finally found peace after a lifetime of storms?